Part 1. The Gas Station Encounter. The late afternoon sun dipped low in the Memphis sky, casting long shadows across the parking lot of the gas station on Union. Riley adjusted her oversized sunglasses and leaned against her Jeep, waiting for the gas to finish pumping. The scent of diesel and fried food lingered in the humid air, familiar and strangely comforting. She was in no rush, just enjoying the rhythm of a slow day, the kind of afternoon that allowed her mind to drift without any destination in mind. At 6 feet 2 inches, Riley stood tall, both literally and figuratively, moving through the world with the kind of easy confidence that made people take notice. She carried herself like someone who had learned, sometimes the hard way, how to stand firmly in her skin. Her soft brown skin glowed under the fading sunlight, accentuated by her neatly cropped curls, faded low on the sides with a sharp line etched into place. Riley's style was subtle but intentional, gold hoops that caught the light just right, a delicate chain with her name resting at the base of her throat, and a fitted graphic tee that hugged her curves. Everything about her said, "I know who I am, even when I'm still figuring it out." And that's exactly what she was doing, figuring things out one day at a time. Her divorce had been amicable but heavy. Years spent as someone's wife had blurred the lines of who she was on her own. Memphis was home, but recently it felt smaller. Restless energy buzzed beneath her skin, urging her to reach for more, even if she wasn't quite sure what more looked like yet. She wasn't looking for love or anything serious, but something about this stage in her life demanded exploration. She wasn't waiting anymore. She was moving. As she leaned against her car, lost in thought, she noticed him. He stood a few pumps down, a confident slouch in his stance as he leaned against the nozzle, filling up an old work truck. His steel-toe boots were scuffed from the day, and the uniform shirt stretched comfortably over his lean frame. His locks were freshly twisted, pulled back into a neat ponytail, and a glint of gold in his goatee caught the sun. His eyes met hers, deep, brown, and mischievous, as if he already knew the punchline to a joke she hadn't heard yet. "You look like you don't belong here," he called out, a slow grin spreading across his face. Riley raised an eyebrow, amused despite herself. "Oh, yeah? And where do I belong?" He shrugged, his grin deepening. "Somewhere better." It was such a line, corny, smooth, and playful all at once, the kind of thing that might make her roll her eyes under different circumstances. But today, for some reason, she let it slide. He watched her, head tilted just slightly, as if gauging whether he'd struck the right chord. "You got your phone on you?" Riley chuckled under her breath, catching herself before she could say no. There was something about him, something easy, unforced. He didn't come off like he was trying too hard, but he also didn't have to. His presence was enough. Without fully thinking it through, she reached into her bag and handed him her phone. "It's just a phone number," she told herself. "No harm in that." He tapped away quickly, his thumb moving with a practiced ease that made her wonder how many times he'd done this. When he handed the phone back, their fingers brushed lightly, and Riley felt a flicker of something, something that caught her off guard. "Brian," he said, flashing that grin again. "And now you've got my number, too. Fair's fair, right?" Riley tucked the phone into her back pocket, the corner of her mouth curving into a smirk. "Fair enough." As Riley reached to put the pump back, Brian stayed planted, his easy grin never faltering. He leaned in just slightly, catching a whiff of her scent. "Damn," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "You smell real good." Riley's eyebrow quirked, amused, but unfazed. "Glad you approve." As his pump clicked off, Brian capped his tank, giving her a once-over that felt more appreciative than intrusive. Hope you use it, he said, his voice low and easy, like a secret meant just for her. Riley shook her head, but the smirk lingered on her lips. We'll see. He gave her a lazy salute, climbed into his truck, and pulled away with a rumble of the engine. Riley stood there for a moment, the warmth of the encounter settling in her chest like a pleasant hum. What just happened? She wondered, sliding into the driver's seat of her Jeep. It had been a long time since someone made her feel like this, light, curious, and unexpectedly seen. As she drove away, the radio played softly in the background, but Riley wasn't listening. Her mind kept drifting back to Brian, his easy charm, the glint in his eyes, the way he seemed to know exactly what he was doing without trying too hard. When she pulled into her driveway, she sat in the car for a moment longer than necessary, her fingers drumming lightly against the steering wheel. She wasn't used to this, meeting someone who slid so effortlessly into her space, even if just for a moment. Her phone buzzed in her back pocket. Pulling it out, she glanced at the screen. Brian, hope you made it home safe. If not, I know a guy with a tow truck. Riley let out a soft laugh, shaking her head as she typed back. Riley, home safe and sound. No tow trucks needed this time. His response came almost instantly. Brian, glad to hear it. Sleep tight, tall girl. Riley leaned back against the seat, a small smile playing on her lips. Tall girl? That was new. For someone like Riley, someone who had spent the last few months figuring out what it meant to be herself again, new was enough. Riley shut off the engine with a small, reluctant smile. Brian's words echoed in her mind, and she could still hear his easy laugh. It was just one conversation, nothing serious, nothing deep. And yet there was something about him, something she hadn't felt in a long time. I knew he was trouble, she thought, a smirk tugging at her lips. But I needed it. Slow beginnings. Brian didn't push too hard at first. It was all light texts and funny messages, just enough to keep me curious. He was smooth in that hood but polished way, saying just enough to keep me wanting more without overplaying his hand. I wasn't sure when things shifted exactly, when the texts turned into phone calls, and the phone calls turned into late-night conversations. It was subtle, sneaky the way it happened. He slipped into my life so effortlessly, it felt natural before I even realized it. A week or so after that first encounter, we met up for drinks at a lounge downtown. It wasn't a date, not really. Just two people hanging out, seeing if the energy from the gas station still held up in the real world. And it did. Brian was easy to talk to. He listened more than I expected and asked the kind of questions that made me feel seen without making me feel exposed. And when he laughed, that deep, rumbling laugh that felt like a reward for saying something clever, it was hard not to laugh with him. After a couple of drinks, we ended up back at my place, not because I planned it, but because it felt like the most natural thing in the world. I hadn't been with anyone other than my ex-husband in years, and when Brian kissed me, everything shifted. It was like a switch flipped inside me, reminding me that I was still allowed to feel good, to want someone, to enjoy their company. He leaned in close, pressing his face to the curve of my neck, and murmured, Damn, you smell so good. There was a warmth to his touch, a gentleness that was both thrilling and calming at the same time. It was a quiet but powerful reminder that connection could come in unexpected ways. We didn't rush anything, just enjoyed the closeness, the shared rhythm between us that felt both new and familiar. Eventually, he left in the early hours, not with any promises or expectations, just a simple, I'll text you later. And as I lay there alone, a satisfied smile on my face, I realized that for once, I wasn't overthinking anything. I was just enjoying the moment. Brunch with the girls. The mid-morning sun beamed down as I swung into the lot of the Green Room Cafe, Talia's go-to brunch spot. My Jeep rumbled to a stop, and I gave myself a quick glance in the rearview mirror. Curls neat, tank sitting just right, scent lingering. Good. I stepped out, the crisp sound of my Toms hitting the pavement punctuating my walk to the door. Inside, Talia was already holding court, her locks bouncing with each animated gesture. Across from her, Ashley scrolled on her phone, mimosa in hand, while Shay, Talia's friend with the undercut, sat back with a relaxed air, her oversized button-up hanging just right. I raised an eyebrow as I approached the table. "Who's this?" Talia grinned, lifting her mimosa. "Riley, meet Shay. She's my homie from back in the day. Figured I'd bring her along. Thought y'all might vibe." Shay gave me a nod, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Nice to meet you." Likewise, I slid into the open chair next to Ashley, a small smile curling my lips. "So, what did I miss?" Ashley smirked. "Not much, just Talia talking nonsense, as usual." "Don't hate," Talia shot back with a laugh, her locks swaying as she tossed her head. Then Talia's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "So, tell us everything, or was that text just a tease?" I chuckled, flicking a glance toward Shay, whose gaze lingered a little longer than necessary before she smirked. "Y'all don't even let a girl get comfortable first." Ashley nudged me with a grin. "Comfort? Please, you already comfortable." She gestured at my tank. "I see you with the new fit, cuz. Lookin' fly." "Trying something new," I said, leaning back in my chair with ease. "Figured it was time." Talia narrowed her eyes playfully. "Okay, fashionista, now spill it. How was Brian?" Shay raised a brow. "Yeah, you said he works for the gas company? How he look, though?" I laughed, appreciating the curiosity. "He's tall, about my height, maybe a little shorter. Dark skin, bright smile, locks on point." I shrugged casually. "Got that hood but responsible vibe, you know?" Talia sipped her mimosa. "Ooh, I love me a reformed hood dude." Wait, Ashley cut in. "How long y'all been talking? You said it's been a minute, but didn't this just pop off a couple of weeks ago?" I gave a knowing smirk. "Okay, yeah, it's only been a couple weeks, but you know how it is. Sometimes people just click fast." Shay leaned in, grinning. "And was the click worth it?" I hesitated for effect, then let the grin spread across my face. "It was worth it." Talia slapped the table with excitement. "I knew it. See, I told you to stop playing with yourself and live a little." Ashley grinned. "Details, though. Was he fine?" "Fine," I confirmed. "Smooth, charismatic, and he smelled good, too." I trailed off with a small laugh, recalling Brian's compliment about my own scent. Talia gave a sly smile. "And how'd it end?" I leaned back, swiping a sip of my drink. "He dipped around 4 a.m., said he'd text me later." I shrugged, playing it cool. "And that was that." "Classic sneak out," Shay commented with a smirk. "Bet he did it smooth, too." I nodded. "Oh, for sure. Moved like he's done it before." Ashley snorted. "Of course he has. But hey, it sounds like it was a good time. So who cares?" Talia tilted her head, her tone softening. "So how you feel about all this, though? For real?" I exhaled, swirling my mimosa. "Honestly, I'm good. It's just weird, you know? I feel like I'm starting over, and I don't quite know what I'm doing yet." Ashley reached over and gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze. "That's 'cause you're still figuring you out, and that takes time." Talia nodded in agreement. Girl, starting over is hard. You're doing good, though. It's all part of the process. Shay clinked her glass against mine with a small smile. To figuring it out, one fine man at a time. I laughed, feeling a warmth settle in my chest. Moments like this, surrounded by my people, made it all feel less overwhelming. At some point during the meal, Riley's phone buzzed. She glanced down to see a text from Brian. Brian, y'all didn't talk about me too much, did you? Riley chuckled, typing back quickly. Riley, why? You scared? Brian, nah, just making sure I'm still a mystery. Riley, keep dreaming. I already told them about that hood but responsible vibe you got going on. They think you're all right. Brian, just all right? I might have to step my game up then. Riley smirked, glancing up at Brian as he watched her, clearly amused by her reaction. He raised an eyebrow, giving her a look that said he knew exactly what he was doing. She rolled her eyes, smiling as she typed one more message. Riley. Yeah, you might. I'll let you know if you're passing. Brian. Challenge accepted. Friday evening with Brian. Riley stepped out of the office, the late afternoon sun casting a warm golden haze over the parking lot. It was Friday, and the week had felt longer than usual, filled with meetings, deadlines, and too many let's circle back emails. But tonight was different. Brian had texted earlier, and they'd planned to go out. They'd hung out a couple of times since that first night, and things felt easy, smooth, with just the right amount of fun. She made it to her Jeep, tossed her bag in the passenger seat, and exhaled. Tonight felt good, not overly complicated. Just two people meeting, talking, vibing. Exactly what she needed. Back at her apartment, Riley lit a candle and opened the windows to let in the early evening breeze. She dropped her phone into the speaker dock and tapped the screen until Luther Vandross' Wait for Love began to flow through the room, warm and soulful. The groove wrapped around her like a hug, and she swayed to the music, singing the familiar lyrics softly to herself. She took a moment to unwind with her favorite ritual, letting the calm settle over her, leaving the stresses of the week behind. The music flowed through her as she set her mind on the evening ahead, relaxing into the vibe. Now, time to get dressed. Riley stood in front of her open closet, scanning through her options. She was still figuring out her look, trying to strike the right balance between masculine and feminine. Tonight, she wanted to feel good, something clean and simple, but fly. She pulled out a black silk button-up, loose but not too oversized. It shimmered subtly under the light, catching just enough attention. She paired it with high-waisted fitted jeans in a dark wash and a belt with a sleek buckle. For shoes, she went with a pair of white Nike Dunks, a crisp contrast to the outfit. It wasn't perfect, but it was her way of blending comfort with style, a small step in the direction she wanted to go. Her signature scent, a soft blend of floral and warm spice, clung to her skin from earlier, subtle but distinct. The short curls along the sides of her head were neatly lined. Her nails painted a neutral tone that gave the right pop against the dark shirt. Not bad, not perfect, but not bad. She ran her hands along her jeans, adjusting the belt and pulling at the hem of the silk shirt until it sat just right. All right, Luther, she murmured, smiling at her reflection. We're getting there. The music played on. Sometimes love takes a long time. Wait for love. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Talia. Talia, you going out with Gas Man again? Riley, maybe. Mind your business. Talia, girl, just remember, we don't do falling too fast these days. Enjoy it, but don't trip. Riley, I know, I got this. Talia, uh-huh, just don't let that man have you out here in love. wearing his t-shirts and stuff. Riley grinned, rolling her eyes. Talia always knew how to keep it real, but without making Riley feel judged. She set her phone down and grabbed a small gold chain, draping it around her neck, the finishing touch. As she gave herself one more look in the mirror, her phone buzzed again. Brian. On my way. Riley. Cool. I'll be downstairs in 10. With Luther still crooning in the background, Riley grabbed her keys and slipped her phone into her back pocket. She took a final glance around the apartment, the candle flickering gently on the windowsill. Tonight felt light, easy, no pressure, just good vibes. Her phone buzzed again. Brian. Here. She smiled, locking her door behind her as she headed downstairs. The cool evening air greeted her as she stepped out into the night, spotting Brian's car waiting at the curb. He leaned casually against the driver's door, that familiar grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. You look good, he said, his voice low and appreciative as she approached. Riley smirked, slipping into the passenger seat. You're not so bad yourself. The car door shut with a soft thud, and as Brian pulled away from the curb, Riley settled into the seat, the city lights flickering to life around them. Whatever the night had in store, she was ready for it. The city had that familiar Friday night energy, a steady buzz as people spilled onto Beale Street and corner bars filled with locals looking to unwind. Brian's car cruised smoothly through the night, windows cracked just enough to let the cool breeze slip in. Riley glanced over at him, comfortable in the dim light, as he navigated the streets with ease, one hand draped lazily over the wheel. He wasn't rushing, just cruising slow, like he had all the time in the world. You feel like eating first or drinking first? He asked, casting a quick grin her way. Riley smirked. We can do both, but let's eat first. I don't play about my food. Brian chuckled, low and easy. All right then, I know a spot. Brian pulled into the parking lot of a low-key juke joint, the kind of place that didn't need advertising because everybody local knew what it was about. Neon signs flickered in the windows, promising wings, fish plates, and whiskey neat. The air smelled like fried food and good times, and Al Green crooned softly from the speakers just inside the door. The interior had that gritty, familiar charm, laminated menus, dim lights, and old photos pinned along the walls. Groups of people huddled around tables, passing plates and laughing like they had no plans of leaving anytime soon. Brian opened the door for Riley, a small gesture she noticed but didn't comment on. As they walked toward the booth, the bass from the jukebox vibrated through the floorboards, setting the tone for an easy, laid-back night. They slid into a corner booth, the kind of spot where you could see everything happening but still feel tucked away. The waitress arrived quickly, setting down 2 menus and a bottle of hot sauce without needing to ask. You already know what you want? Brian asked, leaning back in his seat with a sly grin, the dim light catching the glint of his gold watch. Wings, always, Riley said confidently. Lemon pepper, extra crispy. Respect, Brian said, nodding approvingly. You got good taste. Riley grinned, propping her elbow on the table. What about you? Catfish plate, Brian replied without hesitation. I've been thinking about it all day. The waitress returned, and Riley noticed how effortlessly Brian placed their order, like a man used to getting what he wanted. She liked the way he spoke, smooth, easy, no need for extra words. As they waited for their food, their conversation flowed naturally. They talked about the randomness of the week, swapped funny stories about coworkers, and debated music. Brian had opinions on everything, and Riley liked the way he made her laugh without even trying. At some point, Talia texted her, disrupting the flow with just the kind of nonsense Riley expected. Talia. What he looking like tonight, though? Riley. Girl, bye. Brian raised an eyebrow at the way Riley laughed at her phone. Who that? Riley smirked, shaking her head. My nosy ass friends. They want to know what you look like tonight. Brian grinned, leaning forward with an amused glint in his eye. You tell 'em I'm handsome? Riley gave him a playful once-over, pretending to consider it. I might let 'em know you're all right. Brian let out a deep laugh, the sound easy and familiar, like he didn't care either way. Yeah, okay. When the food arrived, it hit just right. The wings were perfectly crisp, and the catfish plate looked like something out of a food magazine. They ate without rushing, comfortable in the silence between conversations. Riley loved how relaxed it all felt. No forced chemistry, no awkward moments, just two people vibing over good food. Halfway through the meal, Brian reached across the table, brushing a crumb from Riley's lip with his thumb. The touch was casual, but it sent a jolt through her that she hadn't expected. He smiled, knowing exactly what he'd done, and went right back to his food as if nothing happened. Riley shook her head, biting her lip to keep from smiling. It wasn't fair how easily he pulled her in,